50,000. I don't know if, based on what John's saying, it's not that high, but this is an issue where we could, and I'm not suggesting this at all, so don't stab me, but we could put $1 million into this account as long as the stipulation is it cannot be spent on anything but these items. And if 50,000 spent, then that's what's spent, and we seek FEMA reimbursement for 50,000. So I'd be open to any amount to start, because we could always change it.
Yeah.
We could raise it at a future meeting if all of a sudden John's like, oh boy, they got all their bills together and it's worse than we thought, or oh, it wasn't so bad. But that money can't be spent on it. They cannot use it for anything other than the storm related expenses.
So Pat and Kevin, I think you're educating me. So to be able to open an account, we'd have to have a budgeted amount of money. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what John was.
Yeah, that's a judge, because he can't pay with there's no cash.
Right, you're gonna have to move money out of some account or somewhere to cover it.
Okay, and it's at best an open question as to how we would get labor into that account.
Well, we're not gonna put labor in it. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Well,
You're
I'd
talking
love to
about-
know how it was done in the past.
Well, you could
In the
document
past.
you could document the money, so that's what's going to be submitted to FEMA.
Right.
But then you would still pay it out of the salary account. And then when we get to that point in the year where they start running in the red, then we reload on that account.
Correct. That's what I
Because
agree.
you want
I could-
it, what you're going to submit to FEMA is just going to be the total expenses, not necessarily everything we're going to pay out of that.
Right. What I could do, I could give you next month what we paid in labor, and you could move the money, and you could transfer money into those labor accounts next month if you want,
Right, from this account,
from that account.
if we set it up.
Okay, I think the major item, if I'm reading my text messages right, the major item is not the labor or the overtime, but at least in some of the departments, perhaps the one we've just been talking about. So I'm good with whatever you guys think about doing, but I am highly curious how we could have been doing this one way many times over the 15 years I've been on this board, and now we are unable, or maybe it was.
I'll tell you what it was. I'll tell you what it was. My predecessor did it without the money in the account.
Oh,
It's
okay.
that, and I won't do it because it's illegal.
Okay.
Yeah, no, John, this
That's
is
the
why
bottom
I
line.
came to the board, because what John says is correct. It was just done. We didn't know it was done. We weren't told. We were all here with Al, God rest his soul, but he just did it.
Okay.
And John, we're fortunate to have John, and he's he like you said, he won't do that. So we'd have to say, we want to set up this account with X dollars, to pay these, unforeseen bills out of, and then to Kevin.
So Kev, even if we set up too much money, 100 grand, let's just say 50 grand, pick it up. Even if, the only thing we're going to pay out of that is a legitimate expense from the storms.
Correct.
It has to-
That'll be FEMA
or else
reimbursable
FEMA
too.
won't be reimbursed. Okay. So I've already done 2 motions, so we already know the motion we need. So
Other-
have at
Other
it.
thing I think should happen is that your group should review the expenses in this account.
Monthly.
Sure.
you know.
Well, I don't think we're going to get any new ones in the future, right? I think once we review them, we should have them all, or unless they come in.
Well,
Hopefully
they
not.
may come in dribs and drabs.
All right. So Deb, next step, a recurring agenda item for to review the count on the storm expenses.
Storm account, yep.
All right, so we need a motion and a dollar amount to
Yeah, that's what I
initially
was gonna say.
transfer.
Without a dollar amount, it's hard to make a motion.
Pick 50.
Now their
100.
number that was given to me was 250. Based on what John says, that might be high, but
High.
based on the fact that it can't be used for anything else, it's gonna come through that account. Those bills are gonna have to be, looked at and said, okay, they were storm related and then paid. I don't have a problem if we went too high, or if we, you know, split the difference and we look at it, we put so much in there right now and then see what happens next month. You know, what does everyone else think?
I think 250 is a good number, Kevin and Pat. For the
Yeah.
moment. I think it would be a slight tad bit high, but I think for right now, let's make it be high. But we already have controls in place on what we're going to spend it on, and that's what
Right.
John's going to take care of
Yeah.
for us. So
That's
we're just going to
definitely-
review it every month, and if it turns out to be 175, then we only spend 175. God bless.
And who do these, the bills come into? Do they come into your office, John, or do they go to the highway department?
No, the highway department and then the town engineer has to sign off on them and then they
Okay.
come to us. You just, in that motion, you need to say where that money's coming from.
I think at this point, it would have to be a transfer from fund balance.
Yeah,
I would say in that amount, yes.
And then the FEMA reimbursement and any unused funds would go right back into fund balance.
Right.
Okay.
hi, Joe.
Hey, Kev,
Joe, did you make that motion?
I'll make that motion, sure, if you'd like, or I could second it, whichever you prefer.
Well, we need someone to make a
I'll make the
motion.
motion.
Pat, make it, I'll second it.
Okay,
Okay, so it's 250. John controls it, we review it. Money goes back, comes from fund balance and goes back to fund
back
balance.
to fund
and
balance.
We don't
Yeah.
use, something like that.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Unanimous? Great. All right, item number 6. Amity update. Mr.
Good evening,
Nuzzo,
everyone. Hey, Mr. Chairman, how are you guys doing today? Jim, you want to share a screen? I don't have to, I mean, it's going to be short and sweet for the most part.
Well, why don't you do what you got, Joe?
Okay, so we had our AFC meeting last Monday. And as we all saw, the balance was just under $2 million or 1.986 surplus. Now, when that is added to the 495, 482 of the 1%, which is allocated in the transfer account on line 15 of the statements, in addition to the 515,077 end of the year expenditures, the total surplus is just under $3 million or 2.996793. So we had a conversation on last Monday with this. I did speak to First Selectman Zioli about this. And I voiced my displeasure with the way I, in addition to Jim and the Board of Finance, I voiced our displeasure about the way the budget has been going the last several years. I mean, a $3 million surplus, I understand how it went down. And Jim Zioli said, we probably have to cut this budget back somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple of $1 million, and let them play with $1 million surplus, and then allow them the 1% for certain projects or for some extra money as they would need throughout the year. So Jim and I had that conversation. I voiced my concerns to Superintendent Byers, Terry Loomis, and they listened, they heard us. I said, year after year, we're overtaxing the residents of Orange, and it's not, something needs to change. I know we've been talking about this for years. And, I was pretty firm with them at this point. Spending the money, they increased the medical reserve to 30% from 25%, which was unnecessary. We all said that. They still did it. So I'm not sure how we're going to handle this going forward, but unless the Amity Board of Ed takes a firm stance with this budgeting process, nothing is going to change. And the other thing too, just to let you guys know, we did vote on the 1%, and I'm generally okay with the 1% as long as the rest of it comes back to the town. But then they had already spent another $500,000 for the end of the year expenditures.
Yeah.
So the vote on that 1% was 3-2. I voted for it. Because again, I think they should have some extra money and they were looking to use some of that money to fix the roof versus having to bond it and pay interest on that money. But generally, I'm okay with the 1%, but maybe we need to. $3 million annually consistently is a problem. It's been a problem for a while, as we have voiced in the past. But they haven't really taken our lead on this, and the Amity Board of Ed has not taken our lead on this. So I'm not sure how we're going to make any changes with their budgeting process if we can. And by the way, the 515 end of the year expenditures consisted of a 229 increase in the self-insurance fund, as I just mentioned, increasing it from 25 to 30% on the reserve, 186,000 for COVID related expenses, and then $100,000 to cover the cafeteria's deficit. So that's where the 515 came from.
Then there was money they moved into IT for this year, right?
IT monies as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a $3 million surplus. That's the number.
Is this another year where their surplus was more than the actual increase in their budget from the previous year?
Oh, hell, oh,
Yes.
hell yes.
And also to be
What a
noted,
country. What a
to be noted, Kevin and company, the budget was approved at 2.49. We recommended a 2% increase. And by what we see now with the surplus, I think they could have easily gone to a 2% increase. But again,
Zero.
Zero.
or zero,
Yeah.
but they could have done 2% to satisfy us, and they chose not to. And they're at 2.49, and they're the $3 million surplus on top of that. So it's been a constant problem. I'm not sure what else we can do, but if we don't get the Amity Board of Ed on board, it's not much we're going to be able to do at this point. And that was basically it. That was the main topic of discussion of the evening.
I'd like to, at some point when it's a natural break in the action, I'd like to comment on some of the things Joe just mentioned.
No, this is it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm good.
Okay, and in order to do that, I'll just share my screen. Okay, thank you. This is the note I sent out on Saturday morning. It looks like 8:25 a.m. This was the Saturday of September 12th. This after I received we received, and I don't know how many of you are on that distribution from the superintendent. I know Joe and I are. And it's what you receive every month from me. I forward them off. It's a Word document, as you can see on the screen there, and an Excel document. And in this case, and what I'm going to open up in a second is that PDF document. First of all, a reminder for all of us about what a surplus is. A surplus is when you have a budget of $51 million. You are saying, I'm going to spend that $51 million for these particular items. That's why I budgeted for that. When you don't spend it all, and then you decide to casually spend, or even non-casually spend, so let's just say you have a $4 million surplus, and you spend $1 million of that. That does not mean, wrong answer, that does not mean you have a $3 million surplus at that point. There was nothing in the budget saying they were going to spend 1% of their total budget, which was roughly $50 million. So it'd be 500,000. Joe has a number higher than that. One of the other documents had a number just slightly lower than that. That does not mean that when you take that out, your surplus is lower, because you didn't budget for that. Had you budgeted for that, it would have been in your budget. It would have been voted on by the people who say, yeah, that's a good use of our tax money. We're for that, or we're not. And that's, and last year we didn't have a vote, but that's the process that we go through. So I think we have to emphasize to particularly our citizenry, surely our Amity Board of Education members, and even ourselves what a surplus is. So you can see on this document, what I sent out that Saturday morning that all of you received, that at that moment in time, my best guess of where they were was in the Excel document that you have attached here, that's the 1.950777, which they then call surplus. So anybody historically goes back and say, oh, I wonder what the surplus was for that particular year, 1920, they would say, well, it's right there in the Excel document. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because what they've done in the Excel document is actually take out of all of the categories, things that were not budgeted, and spending it on something else. That's very important to understand. Now, when you go to this COVID document, which was distributed, let's take just a small peek at what they spent, what that point in time was called. Let me move this so I can see it better. And take a look at what they decided to spend money on because they had extra money, a surplus. And remember, it wasn't just because we stopped teaching in March that we have this surplus, because we've had $2.5–3 million surpluses before. Take a look at that first line item there. We are now going to spend $257,000 on items that we cut out of our budget request for this current budget year, and now we're going to throw them back in. Meanwhile, they'll be trying to say to people, us, the representatives of how our people in town pay taxes, that they had a 2.49% increase. Wait a second. You have a 2.49% increase, but that's after you cut out these things. Now you're going to get them anyway. Sounds like a higher than 2.49% increase there. So, other than getting verbal overlay, this is a document that was not used in Excel, and in an earlier version, the numbers didn't add up. Both Kevin and I figured that out when we tried to calculate it. It was only off by a little, but the point is it was off. But it doesn't have on the right an explanation for these. The worst form of communication is verbal communication. There's no documentation. And you can see here, maybe all of these categories were good and just, right? One of them has to do with the medical reserve that Joe mentioned, that 229,311, that actually raises, what is the category, Joe, from 25 to 30?
Medical reserve.
Medical reserve. Remember, our professional and medical reserve said it should be 15%, maybe. And we got double that. So you can see the other things there, and there is the 1% capital and non-recurring, 490.
Let me interrupt you one moment. Now that 1.5 million was actually, aside from the 495, it was the 515, which actually was spent. So it was $1 million, not the 1.5 million. So this was prior to what the final end of year expenditures were. And they included the self-insurance, the COVID related at 186, and the cafeteria. So some of those were not spent. So it was still $1 million that were spent, just not the 1.5 million.
The 1.5 million included the 1% fund.
Yeah, but the actual expenditure number, and I confirmed this, was 515,077, based on on the AFC information that she sent to us last week, a week and a half ago. So it's still $1 million. So we had $1.5 million, but that number was not. It was actually not correct. It was a little bit less. It was $500,000 less. Per the updated information she sent us for last week's meeting.
Is that a document that got distributed?
Yes, it's in the AFC package, Jim. Yeah.
Is that a document that got distributed in what I'll call a natural format rather than a native format rather than a PDF?
Well, the 515, I found that number from, let me just see here. You know, when they do the overview, and the details behind the financials,
Right?
it was in there, the 515. I confirmed, I talked to them about it as well. And I can't find it right this moment, but let me see if I can find it here. End of the year expenditures.
Jim's email that he called up with the COVID-19 impact is dated from the Amity superintendent on September 11th.
Right.
Yeah, I think the end of the year numbers were just the 515 plus the 1%. And we did have it spelled out. Let me just see something here.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, back earlier in March or February, didn't they spend money for those things like Jim said they took out of the budget, the IT stuff, and there are quite a few other things that raised it around 3.5 million or even higher for the year.
It's,
Yeah, they did a lot of infrastructure. They spent it while they were coming to us. And that was my argument with their budget back when,
Right.
was
Okay.
that their 5-year technology plan, even though they already spent it a year ahead of time, didn't change. It was like, that didn't make sense to me back then. Because the 5th year should have dropped off, but it's still there. And they paid it now. And I thought either the current year we're in, since we paid it ahead of time, shouldn't have an expense, but it still did. And so did all the other years projected out. So yeah, I'm just at a loss on that myself.
yeah. Joe, the reason there's a difference is when they did this on the 1%, 495, and the number you've been quoting, it's because they were looking at 1% of a budget of a prior year's budget when they threw that number in, rather than the budget year in which they happen to be recurring. The point for us is what I tried to articulate in this email, and that's right over here on the left. You can see from the Excel file that there was this almost $2 million. You can definitely see that they said whatever that number is, it's close to 1.5, all right?
Mhm.
And whether or not this categorization of this 1498,223, which is the number you see at the bottom of this end of year purchases document, all right? And that I have listed over here, all right, that's money that they are spending. So the surplus is clearly rising towards $3.5 million. This is just basic math. Then there is the issue of overtaxing our residents. And it isn't, if it was a 1-year thing, it would be one thing. Remember last February when I asked for that just one basic chart, and I just showed you, all of us and them, that in the last 10 years, their surplus was higher every year than what they asked for an increase. And that's just beyond, that's beyond. What that means is, and I can get the PowerPoint document if you like to see it, is that in every single year, we can't go lower than whatever percent. Or the other argument, it's such a small percentage increase. And yet that amount of money that you're asking for an increase is dwarfed by the surplus that you have at the end of the year. There's no common sense going on here. And I suppose that's why Jimmy is going to have the conversation he's going to have with the superintendent. They're
He's meeting with her this week, I think.
over flavor.
Yeah.
That's what
Jim,
I got. I'll get off this.
Just to let you know, just quickly, one last statement. On page 12 of the 2021 forecast in the AFC,
Which document?
she sends the forecast behind the financials in the AFC packet.
All right.
On page 12, she has fiscal year 2020, which there notes the 515 and end of the year purchases through June 30.
Okay, just let me catch up with you, Joe. I'm very eager to learn what you're saying.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So here's the packet. And what page again?
So go page 12 after the financials. Go
12?
to the- I don't know if it's 12 there, but scroll down, let's see. All right, keep scrolling. It's after the financials, page 12. Yeah, keep going there, right there. So that's page 1 there. Go to page 12.
Oh, it's the Word document.
The Word
Let me just
doc.
open up the Word
Yeah,
document. It's be a lot easier, Joe.
Okay. Comes over as PDF. He has a Word doc.
Yeah, well, it's buried in the PDF as well.
That's 12, page 12 there. Yeah.
And what's on the page, Joe?
The fiscal year 2020 end of the year expenses.
Whoops. I must have went by it.
It says 12 on our page.
I'm having a hard time seeing this, Joe.
Right, 11 is 12. Yeah, coming up. Okay. So the bottom of page 12, it's on. You're on 15. Which way are you going? Wrong way.
Wrong way. Thank you, Joe.
Wrong way. Right there.
Okay.
The bottom of that page. Fiscal year 2020, right there.
Okay.
1,950,000 plus the 515 plus the 490, actually 495, or yeah, 495 or 492, 495. So that's where that number came from in the end of the year purchases. So a little less than what she originally predicted. When
Would
the
it be great if the Excel document would have something that kind of
yeah, it
this.
wasn't in there exactly, but she explains it right on page 13.
Well, there may be words here. I don't know if I'd go so far as
The thing I like that's highlighted here, not to interrupt you two gentlemen, is, and it's in bold.
Yeah.
The monthly forecast for May 2020, blah, blah, blah. The change is 815,982 higher. So in June, the surplus jumped $815,000
Yeah.
after spending some of that money earlier. What would it really have jumped? And that's where Jim always,
yeah.
shows us, January, February, we know. And this, if they didn't spend some of that money on technology or other projects, the change at the last month of the year would have been an additional $1 million surplus. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you scroll down? I'm curious as to the COVID justification.
Yeah, they had COVID expenses totaling was 186, Pat.
Yeah. Although in
Oh, right.
the other spreadsheet, they said all of the additional expenses were COVID related, which, yeah, they've got 296 COVID claims, additional purchase services are lower. I'm personally a little troubled about throwing everything in the COVID garbage can. I think it's a convenient excuse for this year.
Good excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to fix this somehow. I'm not sure what we do. We've been trying for years, and I'm not sure what else we can do besides getting the ABOE involved, but it hasn't worked. So I'm not sure where we go from here, but
It's got to be a concerted effort from the 3 towns boards of finance, the 3 first selectmen and select women, and the local boards of education who get hurt when Amity's increases are so much, like this
Right.
year, we asked them, COVID, don't add positions, and they did anyway. That was that's just, this wasn't the time to do that. They did it anyway. And we've talked about that enough, but I think it's going to take a concerted effort from more, because what we approved earlier this evening, wouldn't it be great if the Orange Board of Education had these surpluses? They wouldn't have to come to us. They just would fix it.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Yeah. And then they'd say it was COVID related.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, right.
John, bad news, the Jays scored 2 points.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, may I have permission to jump off a little bit early here? And just a couple things. I didn't have any changes to the minutes, but I will approve them as the board recommends. And I'm also in favor of voting to return the excess cost sharing to the Orange Board of Ed. All right, we'll vote as the board will vote, if that's okay.
It's dark. Is there an indoor golf place?
No, no. golf today. I am playing Wednesday
there is.
in Danbury, but I didn't play today, unfortunately. The nice day to play too.
Well, I won't pick on our missing board member, but that's where he may have been.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm going to stop screen sharing for this one, unless you
But yeah,
got.
Joe, I thank you, because as long as nobody else is going to be leaving us, we still have a quorum. So if you have something you have to attend to, I thank you for your input.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Finance, and you guys have a nice evening. We'll talk to you soon.
Stay
Take care,
healthy.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Healthy.
By the way, a point of information. If I jump on a meeting for the Board of Finance and we have like 10 agenda items and I say I got to leave after the second agenda item, but I can tell you right now before we discuss any item, how I'm going to vote on it. Is that kind of kosher or not kosher?
Not kosher.
Well, he's got no say in it because he's no longer in the meeting.
Okay.
So
But he was sure to do that, so maybe we need,
Yeah,
I
his
just need
vote
to
can't count. He's
understand
not
that.
here.
what's that, John?
His vote can't count. He's
No.
not.
No, his input as, but he,
I appreciate the input, but I don't know about a vote.
yeah, no. No,
We don't-
I'd like to leave to go get a haircut, but I can't do that. So,
The barber's right down the street from your office.
well, that's the Orange office. I'm in Branford.
And well, you gotta come to Orange then.
I've got someone who cuts hair in Branford. I'll refer you.
Okay. All right, so item number 7, the Vice Chairman's report. Mr. Leahy.
Okay, everything you didn't want to know about this particular topic. No, it's a good news story, actually. And it looks like I have to go back to sharing. So here's my report. It's about this fire truck challenge thing. And I know you've been all on it, but so let's just say that this is an opportunity the Board of Finance. And so I'll just run through it. I think most of you you're probably tired of getting my weekly email, but anyway.
I love it.
All right, so here we are, the Fire Truck 50K Challenge. And what I have here is what I'll call a super summary. I can get our pictures of all of us out of the way. Maybe there we go. So for those who haven't been around, it's been, a real activity to try to challenge ourselves for citizens to be involved. Last May, for those who weren't around at the time, at an Orange Board of Finance meeting, we talked about the carnival being canceled and the Orange Volunteer Fire Department, there would be out the $120,000 that they net from this carnival. So I happened to talk to Jim Zioli about it. I met for the first time Von Dumas, the fire chief, and I agreed to do the project now, the retired, and we called it the Fire Truck 50K Challenge. The reason we came up with that name was because they had a payment due in October. They have 2 payments of October in the year. One was in due October of $50,000 for a new fire truck that they have like a 10-year, twice a year payment schedule. Anyway, we created a GoFundMe site. Some people have seen a lot of it, perhaps others have not seen any. We established what I termed leadership sponsor levels, 5,000, 2.5, and the 2% club, the $1,000 contributions. But any contribution the idea was to get people involved, so excited to support our volunteer fire department. A lot of people don't even know we have a volunteer fire department, what we do. We created 4 signs. Perhaps if you've driven on the dump or past the town green, you've certainly seen for tracking and to communicate the message to the citizens. Some videos, some promotional events, and we generated a whole lot of media support. Major hat tip to Rick Roberts. We were on Orange Live, Channel 12, New Haven Register a couple of times, Channel 8, and a couple of times in the Orangetown News. We track donation progress daily. We maintain daily contact within the project core team, which was Rick, Vaughn, and myself. And I provided weekly updates to the OBOF et al. Because I started adding a whole lot of anybody who I got an email address that I wanted to share this with or nudge them with it. I added them to the list. We've had 17 updates and we're still going it. So that's this process summary for if you hadn't heard about it before, what we've been doing since May and early June on this Fire Truck 50K challenge. Now, as everybody probably knows but if you don't, the carnival is a major fundraiser. $120,000 is a big nut for the overall budget that the Orange Volunteer Fire Department has. They get a grant from the town each year. What is it, John Cifarelli? 180,000, I think now. So this is a
Yes.
major contribution, and they do events. And so there, as I very crudely depicted on the right-hand side, their carnival revenue was on fire, just like when they come to our house when we have a fire, how to help them. This was just a charter so we have some structure, some team champions. I'll take care of the process. And then I wanted to make sure all of you, because we agreed, not as a board, but as members of the board, to support this. And all the money would go to the Orange Volunteer Fire Association and Department. This was totally different from the raffle, and it was something that hadn't been done before. The whole idea of neighbors helping neighbors, I guess the key point that I would want to remind people is that this has been going on since 1925. So that would mean 95 years. Back in the day, or in the early days of phones, they would do a phone tree and somebody would call somebody and they had 3 people to call, had to happen fast. And that's still in with better electronics, and still in place today, that spirit. It's something that makes Orange unique. There aren't very many towns. I think there's only 2 in Connecticut, Bridgewater and Orange, that have a volunteer fire department. So it's a good thing. And we were trying to see whether or not we could get up to $50,000 on the challenge. Early on, you may have remembered that I wanted to make sure we didn't get into any political mess. So we worked hard, PJ on the Democratic side and PO Imperati on the Republican side. And I made sure when we did the initial launch, Kevin and Kevin were very instrumental as well, to make sure both of the town committees had the first crack at it. So then we went into what we called the booster stage of sharing in various ways. But we wanted to get it out to many people as possible. The situation and anybody who wanted to contribute, wouldn't that be great? And then we set up final thing before we get to the current numbers. We set up a button on the town website. That button is also on the Orange Volunteer Fire Department website. And a click there brings you right to the GoFundMe page. All right, so donation status. Here we are right now. For those who happen to take a peek at this morning's email, we are now up to $121,216. This is pleased me. I've been kind of working on this a lot since we started this. The 3 major things, it surprised me because I thought that most of this would come through the GoFundMe. But as you can see, $47,173 is from the GoFundMe site, a significant amount of money, approaching the $50,000. But what I didn't expect was that over time, that amount would be dwarfed by the red piece of the circle, and that was checks. Because we said, well, listen, you don't have to go through GoFundMe, you can cut out the VIG and send a check. And we had the post office box, and a lot of people sent in the checks. A lot of people who went and did the raffle would send in money for the raffle tickets and a check for the fire truck challenge. In addition, we had high hopes for a lot of promotions. We got to see, you know, a sizable chunk of money out of it, 2,608. But anyway, that's the status as of Sunday, yesterday, where we stand. This is a picture of the website. You can see actually it's 47,273 because by the time I went and got a picture of the website this afternoon, someone else had given $100. So there's now $100 higher, but the website hasn't changed. And this I thought was interesting. It isn't a one-for-one thing, but on the left-hand side of this graphic, I daily get up and the first thing I do in the morning is check the site. So I kept a daily log and it's in Excel file that I send out every week. You can see we've had kind of a leveling off on the last 4 or 5 days and the sizable startup and how significant was that startup. And then you can see on the right-hand side, we didn't get the checks on a daily basis. It's a volunteer fire department, and the treasurer and the assistant treasurer were very prompt in getting the checks, but they were also doing the raffle in July. So there was a little bit of a time delay. So as best as I could do, they send me the checks, a status now every Sunday, standard work. Bert Gallant does, she's a great lady. And Charlie, also a great guy. He's a treasurer. And so you can see that right in the middle of July, what a sharp jump there was. And again, remember, keep track of the axis. I wasn't able to overlay them. So there's a definite better way of communicating it, but I was at least able to give you a picture of how dramatic the front end was on the GoFundMe and how significant the mid-season is, and the continuation of all our efforts, letters to the editor, articles that come out, how much they helped out during the storm in the latest Orangetown News, for example. So you can see that it's having an impact, and that's what's driven it up so high. So I just wanted to give you a flavor of the rate at which both of them did. But the one on the left is a daily one. The one on the right, I get checks periodically, and now it's consistent over the last 6 weeks. Every Sunday night, they give me the most recent set of checks. In terms of the awards, I mentioned that, and we're honing in on it. But you know, we're just trying to see if we could get a few people to reach a little higher. And there were the 2% Club, the Gold, and the Platinum. And these were the list of people. It's been on the site now for a while. And shout out to everybody who's stretched it. When you add up all the numbers here, you come up to over $50,000. So you can see that approaching almost half from these 33 contributions made by organizations and individuals and families and businesses to support in a way that helped out a great deal. We also, and these getting into the final things, we've created this, and again, major hat tip to Rick Roberts. We wanted to, have a really classy, this happens to be one for the Foyer family, but this would be Kevin, I think you got one, Kevin Moffett,
Yes.
to something you could frame or whatever. We also have decals that we sent out. And we wanted it to be as nice as we could make it. I don't know how clearly it comes across, but in the background, that is the replication. It comes out better on the actual, or maybe it does. It's okay, I guess. Now I tilt my screen. That's the firehouse up on next to Town Hall. And it's the same picture that's on the website, the GoFundMe website. So we thought it was a classy touch, and we sent those out.
And
as well.
that picture, Jim, has more meaning because that's the photograph that was taken and the flags hanging across the road. that greeted the funeral procession of Vito DeVito.
Oh, really?
Yes. That's when that picture was taken.
Okay. I did
So-
not know that. I did not know that.
So that's a fantastic photograph.
It is.
Yeah. So that's what you got. I think that's it. These are just, decals. I have one on my car. I don't know what to say when I go down to see Chief Gagny, whether I should tell him it should get somebody a get out of jail free card or anything, but I'll get him on that. But anyway, it's a nice thing, and we've been giving those out. We haven't got them out to everybody, but I'm dancing as fast as I can, I guess as the saying goes. So that's basically my report out of it, guys. Unless you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jim.
Kevin, if I could say something?
I was waiting for you to, I was gonna say if you wanted a point of personal privilege. I didn't know if you wanted
Absolutely.
now or later, but now it's perfect, Pat.
Thank you. Now it's perfect. And I will probably read this. This is for Jim Leahy. I'd like to take a minute to recognize and personally thank Jim Leahy, the guy in the seat next to me at the Board of Finance meeting for the last few years until all of this screen stuff. Jim, from the germ of an idea about answering a critical need in Orange that was identified by the Board of Finance in late May, you turned this summer into a successful, and of course someone's calling me now, a successful drive to support the Orange Volunteer Fire Department.
Call from Richard.
Sorry. In a short 3.5 months, not only did the fire truck 50K challenge reach its initially stated goal, it doubled it and then some. By today actually topping its revised goal of 120,000, and as of this morning, it stands at 121,216. That's 245% for those of you who love numbers. Jim, you did this with a clear vision, with amazing organizational skills, and with enviable tenacity. You led and grew a huge team of diverse volunteers, always keeping us well informed and on the right track. Kudos from me personally. The town of Orange and the Board of Finance are so lucky to have you, and I'm blessed that you're a colleague and a friend. Thank you, Jim.
I wouldn't mind having that
I'll get it to you.
Thank you, Pat.
as a document. Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Nice, Pat.
I know everybody agrees.
Absolutely. Okay. After that, item number 8, discussion and approval of minutes from the July 20th, 2020 regular meeting. Do we start with John?
Okay.
Batting leadoff.
Let's start right on page 1 under staff. Deb, instead of Paul Breton, it should be Bob Breton. Page 2. I think we need to rewrite that first sentence at the very top. I think it should say, Mr. Cifarelli explained that the wet sprinkler system pipes in the attic froze during a previous winter. During the previous winter, 2018, and damages were extensive. And then on the second line there, residents needed to be temporarily relocated while repairs were made.
How long were they relocated, John?
I think a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
It was quite a bit. They had to go into one of, I think, the local hotel for a while.
Okay.
Page 4. Under number 8, revenue, review revenue, the first bullet there, the revenue and expense reports were reviewed for. instead of by. And then the next paragraph where it starts with Mr. Cifarelli, I think that should be the Board of Finance suggested a special meeting with the pension board, and I would take auditors out of there, the two separate things. And that's all I had. Jim, you're usually second, like Aaron Judge.
Yeah, I took the initiative to share again so that people at home might be able to see it. I'm going to have to get a better lighting system where I'm sitting right now to be able to read what or my notes. Okay, page 2, I circled this 160. Let me see. So page 2, under item 2, maybe it's, yeah, here it is here. It felt funny to me that we made a motion for 160K when we had just talked about it, the cost being 162.5, and I didn't remember whether or not actual motion I did make, but I just was curious whether or not we decided that we made the motion for just 160.
I would change it to 160.
Okay. Where,
162.5?
No, make it one. I don't remember now.
Yeah, I don't have my notes from the last meeting here, unfortunately. I was trying to go through my piles
Hold
of
on a
papers.
second. I believe I did a memo to Mr. Williams. If I could figure out how to exit the screen here, I could look it up. Give me a second.
all good.
Yeah, remember we had the 3 options that specified that dollar amount for the motion, Jim. So I don't know the cost of the conversion versus that 160. It's a great point.
The motion was 162.5.
Okay.
So that's the other way.
So that's, as long as they're consistent, I think is where I'm going, okay? So we've surfaced that one. And now I'd like to go to page 3, item 5. So I have that on the screen as well now. First of all, in the first line under Mr. Cifarelli, a paragraph, Mr. Cifarelli reviewed the current trucks in the fire department. I think it should be fire marshal department.
It should be, you're right.
Okay, good. I ran into that.
That truck is in also, just as a FYI.
Okay, good.
Good.
Down in the bold underneath those 2 bullets, which starts with the words Mr. Leahy. Mr. Leahy made a motion to allocate. I don't think it's allocated. So take off the D. And right underneath there again, it says for the fire department. It should, I believe, say for the fire marshal department. I had spent a fair amount of time trying to educate a person writing an article. I'll leave it at that. One of the articles that had been in the media. And
Since you say that and everybody knows I'm terrible with writing and grammar, just for the record, it wasn't me.
no, it was an outside the Board of Orange Board of Finance. And so I'm sharing everything because they're going to write an article. It's going to be in a paper. It turned out to be in a front page paper. So, but I was being informed, I guess I would say, or at least the person's idea, that I was being informed that I didn't know that the Orange Volunteer Fire Department had a budget of over $300,000 from the town. And I said, well, I'm here to inform you that I do a lot of work with this budget and they don't. Well, I said, in fact, if you don't believe me, I was out walking in Woodmont. I said, if you don't believe me, you just call up the town hall and talk to John Cifarelli. You tell him I said so, and he'll straighten you out. I don't need to talk to Mr. Cifarelli, I was informed, because I've already accessed the town records. So I then informed that it was probably the fire marshal department you were looking at, and if you get it wrong, we will not be happy with facts not being correct being published about our town. So I'm a little sensitive to fire department and fire marshal department, let's just say. Okay. Sorry for the story. Last page,
She was using alternate facts.
not listening to the fact that she may have had it wrong, but nice person. And we've communicated 3 or 4 times since then, so it's all good. The last thing on the night at number 8, Mr. Cifarelli suggested, my point is this. I asked that the recording secretary update the next steps list. I'm worried about, we put on things on next steps, and I think, Deb, we've had at least 1 or 2 tonight. But we don't have a process by which we review next steps as a matter of course. So I don't have any edit to the notes, but I have a concern and a recommendation that we put on the agenda. And if you want to make it part of the vice chairman's report, I'll be happy to. Just call it vice chairman's reports and review next steps. And then Deb, you can just chime in as part of that regular agenda topic, so that we don't say we're going to do something. Oh yeah, didn't we say that once? And that we actually go through whatever next steps we have. So that's my thought, John and Mr. Chairman Kevin, on how on an issue I see because of that, and one way, not necessarily the only way, but one way we could address it on a systematic basis. That's all I got.
And I know the pension board, I believe John notified the chairman of that board that we want to have him at one of our meetings, whether it be October or November. Wouldn't be tonight because we're still in the summer until tomorrow. So we did say fall, but we will definitely follow up with that.
I believe they'll all be here, and you'll probably need Milliman to give a report, and you might even want our consultant that actually oversees how the investments are invested. We might as well do it a special meeting some night.
Okay.
We want to do it. It'll probably be by Zoom, because I don't believe the Milliman person's able to go out into the universe yet.
No, there's a lot of those businesses that won't allow their people out yet. That's
Right.
Absolutely true.
Right. And a couple of people, or at least one person on the pension board, is uncomfortable going out still.
John, if we do that, you mentioned there'd be a presentation, my recommendation, my strong recommendation, gotta have, whatever you want to say. Like to have that there, whatever that material is in advance of the meeting, particularly if they're doing it by Zoom.
Okay.
So that we can, kind of give it a peek before.
Okay.
And if we had a special meeting, I'm not a technology guy, but I've watched Amity meetings and I think Orange Board of Education meetings where some people are there and some are on Zoom. Chairman Kraut and Superintendent Dr. Scarpetti have said, because their room is so large, we could use the Orange Board of Education, as long as they're not holding a meeting. If it's a special meeting, we pick a different day, we could use their meeting room to have, we'd be more spread out to have, Mr. Henlin and our board and then Milliman on Zoom or something if we chose to do that. So
Are we going to our next meeting, Mr. Chairman? Are we going to be live?
I sure hope so.
In other words, in the basement there, a lower level of town hall?
I sure hope so. I'm
Okay, thank
hoping
you.
what's happening in some of the schools and everything else kind of settles down and we don't end up with the problems that are happening in Europe right now, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. The only
Okay.
change I have to the minutes, Deb, and this is probably completely my fault because I was probably slurring my words by 9:44 at night, was the gentleman's name was Danny Doheny, Doheny. And so Donnelly's really close, and I probably said it that way. So that's my only change. So does anyone else have any,
No, all good.
I don't read as well as the rest of you do.
so is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So move.
Motion by Pat.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, abstained, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item number 9, discussion and vote to return excess cost sharing reimbursement to the Orange Board of Education. We have a memo from Christine Koch, dated July 21st. And John, does she pronounce her name Koch or Koch?
Koch.
Koch, okay. I don't want to butcher it. Okay,
It's the same thing we do every year.
it is.
Hey, John, when I looked at this memo, I got for me, interesting thought. A thought came to mind. I'm just gonna put on it here for Zoom so that people can see it at home. So here's what came to mind. What they're basically saying is, hey, we budgeted $548,764. We spent more than that. So the state gave the town 253,000. Well, it looks like 118, and the overage is about the same number, 253,025. Here's the thought. So we're going to give them the money, right? Because it really, the money gets to the Board of Education through the town, right? But here's the thought. The thought is, what motivates us to budget high in special education if we're going to be reimbursed whatever we spent? For example, if I looked at these numbers right now and we had budgeted 3.2 million, we would have gotten back somewhere on the order of 600,000.
Not true.
No?
Yeah,
I
it's a
can't-
percentage.
It is a whole formula and I can't speak to it. If you really want to try and understand the formula, you'd have to speak to Dr. Scarpetti over there, but it's not as simple as that.
Okay. I thought it was like 70-odd%.
It's depends on the number of children, how much, where they go, what their I think aptitude is. It's a
It's
crazy,
complex. Got it.
very complex.
Okay. Thank you. So Kev, what do you need?
We need a motion to approve a transfer of $253,025 from the town to the Orange Board of Education.
All right. So moved.
There's a motion by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Pat. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, unanimous. Thank you. So that's all set, John. Okay. Item number 10, review revenue and expense reports, or new munis reports. Mr. Cifarelli. What are your concerns?
Well, I'll tell you, where do you want to go? You want to just start with revenue?
Yes,
Go
'cause
through
I look at the revenue.
Why don't we just go through it page by page, and anything you got, I'll try and answer. I think that works pretty good, right, Jim?
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, most of the actions on page 2.
Correct.
Matter of fact, John, I was able to create that Excel spreadsheet, so if you want to just jump to that, I can share that.
Yeah, Jim and I had a conversation today about taxes and comparable to last year, and we're in pretty good shape right now, I would say.
What I observed here, and make sure everybody's on the same page, I'm sharing now, and I'm on page 2 of your document. So the revenue document 9/16/2020. And what you have here is real property, personal property, and motor vehicle. And then you started to look at the percentage on the right-hand side. You may have had a certain reaction. But then I noticed underneath that you had real property CC, you had motor vehicle CC, you had personal property. You can't see the CC because it doesn't go out far enough, but it's the same thing. So I called John earlier, and then I had a little time, so I created this document, which I can send out. But basically, what you're looking at here is the following. First of all, for these 4 areas, and some of them are very large, one is very small prior year, but they were the 4 that had the CC number in it. And what I was trying to do is I wanted to combine the year-to-date collected, and I made the date off by 1 day, John. I think it's the 16th, not the 17th.
Yeah, no big deal.
Give me that hustle there. So you had the 28, 243, 140, et cetera, and I hope I copied them over right. And then you had the CC number, so you had a total. And the same thing for personal property and motor vehicle. And so what I did is I then got a total, and same thing for prior year. And then what I did is say, okay, now I've got the real total, all right? Because on the document there, since they didn't budget anything for CC, how can you? Credit cards. Now we know where we stand as a percentage of this year's budget for each category. All right. And then what I did, and I have it here I happened to go look it up. I looked up Arthur's sheet from last year, and here it is. I have it on the screen to see, okay, I know this one, the best we could do is end of September. So we're only halfway through September. So I just said, well, it's some data. Let's take a peek. So I have 51.7 for real property, 57.6, 94.5, 47, 49.7. So what I did is I just punched those numbers right into this sheet right here. Okay. So if you just move into this zip code over here, you're really in the area where we can say to ourselves, okay, at this moment in time, midway through September of this collecting during a COVID season, we are at 50.9%. How good or how bad is that? Well, last year at the end of September, we were 51.7. So we're pretty close. And that's a very large number. And the less than a month yet to go. Doesn't say we'll get to wherever we were last year. Doesn't say last year was the greatest year of history. It just says, where do we stand in terms of last year? Similarly, for personal property, we're at 56.3 as compared to 57.8. All right. And by the way, I can send everybody this document, this Excel file I created. Motor vehicle, not as much. We're at 94.5 here. We're at 90.2 here, but at least we know. And again, we have the rest of the month. All right, so there you go. And again, it's a lower number, but still a significant number. And then prior year, since we had the number, I just did the calculation, and we're pretty close to where we were last year. Overall, not overall of everything in the column, but the total of everything in that area, and I think it's right there on your page 2, 68. No, I have the wrong number here.
36,801.
John, I have it the revised number. I got it's 68,789, 918. I went to the revised column, so maybe I should have been in the non-revised column. I don't know, but in any event,
No, you got the right number.
Okay.
You have
So,
the right number.
and here's where we are in relation to that, the 36,801, which you can see if you're looking at your document, you can see that that's right there, right? 36,801,391. So I'm just, pumping this back into Excel manually. So it's, ripe for error. And then that's 53.5. And again, go to Artie's document from a year ago, end of the month, right? Was 54, okay?
What we have there, if I can interrupt you a second.
Please do.
Second, Jim, we have a 0.5%, we're behind. That 0.5% is about $343,000. We also have 17, I'll say individuals, because I don't know if they're residents or businesses that did delay their taxes, that filed the affidavit that will be due on October 1st. So we'll probably have a better feel for things next month.
And John, to that point too, the line item that's not on the spreadsheet, the interest and liens, that's when we take the credit cards and the other, it's still about 100 and, it's probably about 30% collection. But unfortunately, if those poor people were in trouble before the year started, that's probably another 130,000. That's
Right.
going to be iffy going through. Not we want a nickel and dime at this point, but I look at that, and then the personal property, as you know from my emails, has always been a concern as to what businesses are no longer there. So we're not, what amount of money are we not going to collect? And that would be for Mark to tell us. Things we know or don't know, we don't know. But it's still, in my opinion, and I think with Jim's spreadsheet is excellent. We're better than I thought we would be.
Yeah.
I think so too. The other
Yeah.
thing we're gonna have to watch, and I won't know that number until probably the December meeting, supplemental motor vehicles. With
Yeah,
everybody being laid off and stuff, there probably weren't a lot of cars that were purchased in that period to fall into supplemental. So we'll have to see if we get anywhere near that number that we estimated this year. The past
But-
2 years.
but on a brighter note, and I'm always the pessimist, the doom and gloom guy. I will tell you, I have a client who owns 2 car dealerships in Milford, and he had inventory issues because I don't know how many people are from Orange.
Hmm.
I have no idea if they're from Milford or they're from Stratford or Bridgeport, but they ran into believe it or not, inventory issues because people refused to take the train.
Yeah,
So they were actually had some businesses have done better than usual because
Right.
of this pandemic and
There's one car dealership right next to Costco there that has a overflow lot. And if you notice going to Costco, that overflow lot is just about empty right now.
so we might have a surprise on the supplemental or we
Could
might
be.
not. So
We'll
But
keep
it-
our eyes on it, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't notice that interest in liens, Kev. That's at 27%, as we can see right there. And last year, that was much higher.
and the unfortunate, because anybody who's in that situation right now with their taxes, it's unfortunate, but we're statutorily, we're still going to accrue interest at 18%, and the town will
Right.
get paid at some point in time.
Mhm.
I don't know how the state of Connecticut or any state still has a statutory interest rate at 18% when the federal funds rate is basically 0.
Yeah.
But that's not that we have no say in that.
Right. By law, she has to collect that.
Correct.
Even those individuals that signed that affidavit to October 1st, if they're not paid by October 1st, it's 18%.
Yeah. And it's been that way and the legislature's never addressed it. And,
Mm.
that's, to me, it's just like credit cards or, we could go on and on, but
Right.
Yeah.
student loans, when the banks are borrowing at 0 and 18%, whatever,
Yeah. All right, so I will, as a next step, send out, assuming everybody wants it, I'll just send out this document tonight. And so you can, I'll even fix this error. I know it just now noticed. Thank you, everyone, for being kind and not mentioning it. I just saw it.
John, I'm looking at the next page. And our budget for the Amity surplus was 300,000 and it
Yeah.
looks like it's gonna be 1 million.
Right.
I would say that, yes.
So hopefully, any of our shortfalls, which we can't project, but that's a big plus.
Right.
It's a crazy way to live, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it affects us.
And I could hear Pat's voice because the year before, I think we originally talked about budgeting 500 and we moved it to 8.
Yeah.
They're like, come on. And this year we were at 3 because, everything was so bad. And lo and behold, even, it's going to be 1 million, give or take. And it could have been 1,250,000 if they didn't do the 495.
Yeah.
It could have been 1.5 million if they didn't spend money on the other things that they did. And I don't want to berate that. And Joe's not here. I missed my chance with the Amity update, but when one of the big reasons for the 500,000 that they're keeping is for a roof that comes out of warranty next year after 10 years. I mean,
Yeah.
like Mr. Leahy always says, I mean, how many of us change our, redo our roofs every 10 years? Just because it's out of warranty doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, there's some quizzical thinking. There were even some discussion, I believe it was at a meeting, but it might have been in the meeting or before the meeting by one of the members of the board, Amity board. And they were talking about, this has to do with the field and the field at that
Oh,
point.
thank you for reminding me of that. So go on.
The field at that point in time was going to cost either 1.5 million or 2 million or whatever. And we all have seen how it's, caught up in whatever it's caught up in now. But I was actually being told that it would be prudent to, starting now, budget $200,000 a year so that at the end of 10 years, we will have $2 million to have a replacement field. This for a field we have yet to put in. It's a good reminder of what we're doing and how we examine money and look at money and how other elected officials do. And I'll leave it at that.
Oh, that's why they have deficits. You're absolutely right. And I meant to ask Joe this. It's in my notes here, and I didn't for whatever reason. With the field being put on hold somehow from this lawsuit in Woodbridge, that bond is frozen. There's bond interest in this budget. There's bond interest in the next budget, but that none of that money's been, I'm not sure.
The Amity
What's
budget kept.
Yeah, what's happening with that? They might have issued the bonds and have the money in a bank account, but since the field improvements, all that's been stalled. And it takes a greater mind than mine to figure out how, because to me, Amity is owned by Orange, Woodbridge, and Bethany, and I don't even understand why that was going through Woodbridge's zoning board to begin with. But it did.
I think because of the location, and that's where the suit came from residents' property who borders up on the football field.
I just, and I know from letters to the board, because I followed it somewhat, and one of the people is an employee at Yale, but it was my understanding that the field that was being done at Amity was the same that they put in at the Yale Bowl, and I can't imagine Yale putting in a bad field. So to me, the research was done, and I don't, that's for somebody else is going to decide this, obviously, but to stop it, Yeah, it's just too bad. And I don't know, unfortunately, the CIAC canceled the football season, so it's
Yeah,
not gonna change anything for this year, but hopefully they can get it rectified and moving forward.
Kevin, I could kind of answer your question on the bonds. I have an email from Terry. I had questioned what the interest rate, and the bonds were sold at 1.15. So the
Okay.
bonds were sold, I believe.
That's fantastic, to 1.15.
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions on the revenue side? All right, let's move on to the expenses. Again, John, I don't know if you have any concerns here other than our storm, which I think we took care of earlier.
I know one spot where we're probably gonna go over budget is in the benefits or unemployment. I'll give you a heads up on that right now.
What
But
page?
then
are we-
shouldn't we be saving it on salary somewhere else?
We did because we didn't run a full camp and we shut down the pool, but all those people that we didn't maintain the salaries all went and collected unemployment, including the youngsters in the day camp in the pool. So we're getting hit with the unemployment claims around. So I know we didn't cover it. We put 20,000 in the budget and
yeah.
we only have 8,200 left. So I'll just give you a heads up on that now. But I should be able to cover it maybe with money from our negotiated benefit line in there later in the year.
So I'm looking at this online now. I'll just share the screen again so everybody get home. So I'm looking at this employee benefits section, Johnny. And
Excuse me.
which specific line item are you referring to, John? I know you.
The one that says unemployment COM.
Yeah, I got it. 20,000. I see you down to 82. Okay.
The other thing I might say, if we could find our health department on here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Anybody got the page?
I'm looking right now.
Director of Health, I have page 20.
That might be it.
And that's not a lot there. I don't think that's the right one.
No, that isn't. That's Dr. Mohammed right there,
yeah,
who's working full time for, you can see that amount of money.
No, I think, you know, we've talked about that, and I think, you know, something should be done. I mean, he's been tremendous,
he's been amazing.
you know. He didn't sign up for this.
No, he didn't. And I gotta tell you, if I could find our other department here, environmental, whatever we call it,
Yeah,
Environmental health.
environmental health, I think it is. I don't know my new codes quite yet, so it takes me a little bit. Okay, on page 18.
Yep.
Okay, environmental health. We usually have a director and assistant director. The assistant director left in February before all hell broke loose. So basically, Brian Sokowski, can't even say his last name, has been working by himself, this whole department, through this whole paramedic that we're having. They came to me today, him, Dr. Mohammed, and Lisa Pimento from the OVNA, the director of OVNA, they got a directive from the state to start working on what's going to happen and how the town is going to distribute the vaccination when it comes out. They needed a little money for it, and they were in a panic. You need a certain refrigerator or freezer for
Freezer.
it. You need some other things. So it turns out they need about $3,000 right now to do it. So, they had me in a little worry. But when they told me what they needed, I said, okay, I'll cover it. And I will cover it. I have some encumbrances that I could use to pay it and something like that. One of the other things they were looking for was either a portable generator or sometimes an actual big generator like we have here in the town hall to run the building over there. During the storm we had, they were out without power for a couple of days, and they were trying to make do over there and at home. I guess both Dr. Mohammed was without power in his neighborhood when he leaves too. So they're going to be asking at some point in time for capital for a generator over there. I turned them over to Bob Britton to look at the prices of that. It's not that big a building. I don't think we're talking about a lot of money there, but we'll see what happens there.
Well, they
And,
only need it, John, for the refrigerator. They don't need it for the entire building.
well, they're talking about the entire building because when they went down without any electricity, she couldn't get to her medical files for her patients either, which became a problem. And in her lines directly to the hospital for directions on what they're supposed to do for patients that are discharged to them. So it was a little problem over there.
Now, are they in the old library, John?
They're
Yeah,
in the library. They're in the Clark building.
So that's the size of a house.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's
We
not.
could probably put a generator, propane generator to power the whole building for 12 grand.
That's what I was thinking. You do a house, you do those Gentech generators for about 10 grand. I
Yeah.
understand in the houses, so, but well, you'll probably hear something about that somewhere down the road. And we may need to give them more money somewhere down the road to implement the shots and all. But we'll take it as it comes. I just want to give you a heads up on that.
Hey,
It's
if we have a
very-
vaccine, we'll find the money somewhere to help our residents.
Now, all we need is to find people who want to take it.
Yeah.
I said that to Dr. Mohammed, and he said, rest assured, he's not going to give out any vaccine to the town that he doesn't think is going through the proper protocols. And he said he
Yeah.
doesn't see it coming out for quite a while. So,
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree.
and actually, I had a doctor's appointment today where I had that same discussion with the doctor, and he pretty much said the same thing. So,
But from what I understand, it's the COVID vaccine, whatever it is, will probably have to be kept in a freezer rather than a medical
yeah,
refrigerator.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
what I've heard too, Pat. Yeah.
Yeah.
With
they're
a lock on it.
they're
Yeah.
estimating
We have
on
no
that
way to transport it or anything else right now. We don't have the infrastructure to get it to
Yeah.
everybody.
All right.
Okay, John, last page here, 24. Just educate me. We have a bunch of principal and interest, and I'm seeing that we have already paid off, 5 categories of principal. And I'm noticing that we have, paid off one component of interest. Looks like we pay interest twice a year, maybe, if I'm guessing at this right.
most bonds you pay twice a year, yes.
Okay.
And most of them are June and January. We have a couple of oddballs that are paid in April and June, I think it is.
So we're not getting, whatever 0.% on money. So, paying principal is a good idea. Since we're not getting much in it, is this the way we've been doing it for a long time?
Yes. You only certain bonds you can pay off early. And we've done that in the past, like we
Sure.
did it last year. We actually,
Okay.
last fall, remember, we saved about $300,000.
Oh, I definitely remember.
They actually, in that tax bill that was passed a couple of years ago, they
Right.
actually tightened the rules on that, that made it harder for governments to do that refunding.
Hmm.
Really?
But our
Yeah, they-
uh, overseer on that is always looking to see where we, if and when we can do that.
Okay. I have no more questions on this, so I'll stop sharing unless someone else needs to focus on one or two. Kev, Pat,
Oh, I'm good.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm fine. Anybody else have any questions on this?
One other area, we may have to help the registrars, and I don't believe the county clerk. I think he's got enough money to cover it, but they're gonna need, if they can find them, they're probably both gonna need to hire extra people for November
Yeah.
with
But
the,
we've had no referendums or anything else.
no. But they're gonna be overloaded with absentee ballots and stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
We are supposed to get $11,000 from the state though, to help cover that. So I'm hoping that will go.
Yeah, I don't know where their state's getting their revenue from these days, but biggest sales tax generators are closed, but
Yeah.
or partially closed, so we'll see.
They did say income tax revenue was up though, for some reason.
Oh, the situation in New York City's been the best situation for Connecticut in 25 years, I think.
Conveyance taxes, you name it. Jim, you're dead on.
Right.
I mean, who among us, is it just me? Or do you see 3 times or 4 times as many New York plates driving around Orange, Connecticut these days?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I see it all the time.
I had a Milford client sold his house last week for $40,000 over asking price, and his asking price was inflated.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The, you see houses, they're turning over in a matter of couple of days, 4
Yeah.
or 5 days, they're going.
Before they even get listed, Kev, is what the
Yeah,
people I heard
right.
from. Yeah. So. Who
No,
knew?
it's-
What a marketing campaign it could have been for us, right?
Yeah, the sad thing is Manhattan's gonna pay the price. I mean, they're gonna have 75% vacancy rates in some of their apartment buildings. But,
They're gonna have it in their office buildings too.
Office buildings too.
oh,
Yeah.
big time.
And I read today about all the hotels that are closing also.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah.
So I think office buildings are gonna be all over. I
Yeah.
think you're gonna find businesses that thought they could never do it with their workers working at home, but found out it actually does work.
Oh, no, that's a fact. I know that's exactly what's happening. They're reducing their footprint by about 75%,
Mhm.
especially in high rent districts. It's yeah, and we see it here with the I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago in Milford, the Connecticut Post Mall. They're saying in order to survive, they need to convert half of it to apartments
Yeah.
or some percentage like that.
Mhm.
So. Okay. All right, so we're all set with that. Yeah, I'm gonna add my own point that in 25 years, we have the volunteer fire department's fantastic. The Orange Country Fair Committee is tremendous. They didn't get to have their fair. It would have been this past weekend.
Mhm.
And we finally had a weekend where I could have cooked in a flannel shirt instead of shorts and a t-shirt because it's been 90 degrees on this weekend for almost 20 straight years. And we had the nicest weekend I can remember.
Yeah.
for a fair, and unfortunately, we weren't able to have it. So hopefully this time next year, we have the same type of weather and we can support them as much as we support other organizations in town, because they maintain that field, that museum, the gazebo.
Bathrooms.
It's a great event, and it's a great group of people. And unfortunately, it was very much missed this past weekend. Would you say, John?
I said the bathrooms also over there.
Yeah, they built that too. So
Yeah.
the fair
And-
committee does a lot for the town.
And keep it renovated, so.
Yeah, so they
Nice area up there. It's a very
Yeah.
nice area. We're fortunate.
That's another area over there. You can see since March, it's getting a heavy amount of use. I don't know, Kevin, you live right there. There are tremendous amount of people using the track over there.
Yeah.
What, not just the track, walking around the whole grounds. It's tremendous, the people that are over there now. The basketball courts, there are kids
Yep.
playing basketball on the courts just about every day over there. The tennis courts are being used. It's really fabulous.
No, it
They're
is.
they're holding a lot of the recreation department, a lot of their exercise classes that they used to hold in the gym are being held outside now.
Outside.
Correct.
You
That's
drive
right.
by
I've
there,
I've seen
there's,
that.
you know, a lot of, you know, particularly for senior citizens, there's a lot, seems to be a lot of like exercise classes going on.
Safer roads, being a runner, you know, Lambert's the kind of a tricky one. It's not very wide, so.
Do have a little breakdown lane on Orange Center.
Yeah, you have a little bit on the side there. But anyway, the idea that and you explore, and when I just get a kick out of seeing these kids on bicycles. I really do. I think it's great.
And I'm inventing an adult snowsuit for everybody to continue walking all winter long too.
Well, it's 38 degrees over at Amity for the 7:15 run this morning.
Right.
I'll tell you right now, I was wearing my winter hat.
Yeah.
It's getting towards turning on the heat at that temperature too.
Yeah,
It is, and I usually try to avoid my heat in my furnace until Thanksgiving.
Me
But
too.
this year,
Here's
might
a-
not.
So, I mean, I would go more toward